things work out.
Hey, this is Sports Law with Lomas Brown, the Pro.
And Deb Schneider, I'm the Prof. And together, we're the Pro and the Prof. So how are you tonight, Lomas?
I am great, Deb. How are you doing tonight? I mean, Deb, we got so much to cover. My gracious.
I know. I mean, it's football, football, football. And we're not even going to get to the Olympics. Oh, my goodness.
That's right. You're right about that. It's just, but Deb, my question is this a, regardless of the news that comes from the NFL, negative or positive, I think the NFL just loves being in the news. They're the king of the sports. Anytime they're out there in the news, and I hate to say it, good or bad, it's good publicity for the NFL because they're just a machine, Deb. It's just unbelievable how they just dominate the sports world all season and on season.
It is absolutely unbelievable. And you know the news, no publicity, or the saying, no publicity is bad publicity. As long as they're thinking NFL, people have short memories and they forget.
Gotcha.
So tonight we've got Sean Belesian, we've got Bill Keenest, we've got our intern Hunter, we've got you and I, and we're going to talk football. And let's start with breaking news. Breaking news. Brian Flores, just like literally 2 hours ago, it broke. He is suing the NFL for violation of, get this, the 1866 Civil Rights Act. He's suing the NFL, the Giants, the Dolphins, the Broncos, and trying to make this a class action suit stating that we're not following the Rooney Rule and that we don't have enough black coaches.
I mean, that's been a big topic, Deb. It really has.
Huge.
And the Rooney Rule itself has been a big topic, whether it works or not. You know, is it fair? And a lot of teams thought it wasn't fair for them to be forced to interview certain candidates.
Right.
But we all know that in the field of equality, you know, we need that, Deb. You need watchdogs to make sure everyone is doing what they need to do to make sure things are diverse, make sure it is equality in sports, in the front offices, just everywhere. So it's just unbelievable, this news that is coming out about Brian Flores.
Right. It is. And, you know, it's a 58-page complaint, 58 pages. And, you know, violation of civil rights of Title VII, back and forth. I could spend the whole time on this, but we should probably bring in Sean and Bill to, you know, jump into this discussion. It's a big deal discussion, and then we can talk Super Bowl and everything else. So my first question is, we've got this lawsuit. What do you guys think about this? It's career suicide. Okay, we saw Colin Kaepernick back in 2016. This is career suicide, I think, to file a lawsuit like this. But I've got football guys. What do you think?
I'll go. I think Brian Flores is an excellent football coach. Mm-hmm. From what I've witnessed from him, I think he's exceptional. Okay, I don't know what happened at Miami. I haven't read the particulars of the lawsuit, so I understand why you would say that, Deb. Career suicide in the NFL, it comes in large part to ownership. If owners think a coach can lead him to victory, make him successful, they're going to hire that individual. I mean, when I heard about this, I immediately go to Jim Caldwell. It is, in my opinion, it's unfathomable that man doesn't have a head job. Mm-hmm. I mean, I mean, I get emotional talking about it because I've been around some great leaders in my sports career. Joe Gibbs, Mike Krzyzewski, a lot of great people that have done great things in the sports world. But no one's a better leader of men than Jim Caldwell. what he did in Detroit, I have strong feelings on why he and Matthew didn't do here what Matthew's doing in LA, and we can talk about that later. But and some may or may not recall, but when Brian Flores got to Miami, one of the first big hires he made was Jim Caldwell to be a sort of an assistant head coach. Jim had some health issues that year and didn't finish the season. So I don't know all the particulars within the suit, but it's just mind-boggling to me that a Jim Caldwell is not a head coach in the NFL, and then you have teams, that are interviewing, or hiring first-time head coaches, and Jim has a track record. So somebody needs to explain that to me, and I don't know if Jim's mentioned in the suit or not, but
I'm not through all 58 pages yet.
okay. But obviously he and Brian do have a relationship. So that's my first thought on it, my initial reaction.
I think the most damning thing to me was the text exchange between Coach Flores and Coach Belichick, because I think, and Lomas, I'll gleefully defer to you here. I think a lot of people thought that there might be some, not all, that use the Rooney Rule as window dressing. And what I mean by that is, we're going to bring in a guy. But he doesn't have a chance in doing that. I've heard that out there. I don't know if that's the case, but that has been out there. And when you have this exchange between Bill Belichick and Brian Flores, where it was clear that Bill Belichick said, I'm not talking to the right Brian here.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because Brian Flores said, well, I'm interviewing on Thursday. And Bill Belichick was talking like this was already a done deal. Well, to me, all the people that say that the Rooney Rule is nothing more than window dressing, they're putting their fist up in the air right now saying, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, here's Exhibit A.
Yeah.
Because that's not a good look. The optics are terrible there.
Yeah, and
that's
Sean,
the start of the lawsuit, actually. That is the very first thing in this lawsuit on page 1 before it even starts the preliminary statement.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, the other thing too is that, when I remember Real Sports, Brian Gumble did something on some of the coaches, some of the black coaches or some of the black candidates that had went for interviews. And the majority of them felt that it was just like Sean said, it was just window dressing. They were there because they have to have the quota. I think the quota is you have to at least interview 1 or 2 minorities during your hiring process. And a lot of them was just doing it just to hit those quota numbers that they had to do it. And a lot of coaches, a lot of these candidates, they felt that. They felt that when they went into that interview, either the decision was already made or they felt that they didn't stand a chance to get that job. And now, like you all are saying, all these guys can put their fist up in the air because they know it was true. They feelings that they felt, they knew it was true, just off what happened with Brian Flores and what's going on right now.
You know what, Loam? I have a different take on the Rooney Rule. I think ultimately the same desire for something to be effective. But go back to the Lions when we hired Steve Mariucci. That was the genesis of the Rooney Rule.
Right.
Okay?
That's right.
That was the genesis of it. And as we were intimately involved with that, there were black candidates that didn't interview. Matt Millen asked to interview, they wouldn't, and they believed that the deal was already done. Okay, so here's the thing. After we got through all that, and this rule was established, here to me has always been the flaw of the rule, and I've shared this, over the years. This rule, however well intentioned it is, which it is still structured in a way where a team is not guaranteed that it will be able to interview a minority candidate, because the candidates just simply can say no. No. I mean, is it practical that would happen? No. Is it possible? Absolutely. So my thought, which I've suggested over the years, establish a system where logical candidates, logical assistant coaches, college coaches, whoever, football minds would determine would fit into this pool of potential head coaches in the NFL, coordinators, whatever it is. And at the beginning of the season, each of those individuals, and it can be from the college ranks, the pro ranks, can indicate that if jobs come up at the end of the year, they would like to be interviewed. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then the committee, and then you're basically locked into interviewing. Okay. And then at the end of the year, there's a systematic way of owners who want to hire a head coach are obligated to interview from this pool. Okay. Now so that would guarantee to me, minority coaches that want to be interviewed for the right reasons, at least they're going to get the interview. And what I'll go back to on this is what happened to Tony Dungy. Okay. Because Tony, I've known Tony for years, and we remain friends to this day. And Tony interviewed 7 times before he got hired. 7 times.
Wow.
But what he told me once was he doesn't regret any of them, because every time he interviewed, the individuals on the other side of the desk knew him better than they did before. Okay. So I got to believe that ultimately helped him. I would think so. I would hope so. But it's one of the big mysteries to me, that like I'll go back to the Jim Caldwell example. How that man's not a head coach is it's sad to me. It's very sad, very troubling, and perhaps that contributed to Brian's emotion, because there has to be emotion involved with this, that contributed to his decision to file the suit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm sure we can keep talking about this for the entire, but let's turn to Matt Stafford. I'm so excited. I am so excited. It's like, between Stafford and Eminem, I feel like Detroit's in the Super Bowl.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh man, that was pretty good.
Yeah. I remember years ago, there was another former Lion who was playing on a team that had a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And when his team made the Super Bowl, I had tears in my eyes. And I waited for that guy right off the field before the game so I could give Lomas Brown a big hug. And Lomas not only made it once, he made it twice.
I know.
But he wasn't good enough to play for us, That's a little editorial comment there. But yeah, I have a unique relationship with Matthew, much like I did with Lomas. And I was screaming. I was literally screaming the last few weeks watching him play.
Yeah.
It's been fascinating to watch this whole progression the last few weeks, because Matthew has always conducted himself in such a classy manner, and he rose above so much, but quite frankly, garbage that he had to deal with here. And to see him answer the naysayers and the detractors the way he has been outstanding. It really has, because this is one of those things. We can say a lot of things about I think Matthew Stafford has always been a darn good quarterback. Moments of great, moments of not so great. But I think what you're seeing is Matthew Stafford around a talented team constructed by a general manager that knew how to build a team, well, this is the fruits of the labor right here. And this is what the Lions want to get to. And this is one of those deals for me. Now, we don't know what the draft picks are, but we could look back on this 3-4 years from now and go, wow, this was a rare win-win deal, because it was time for Matthew to move on. The Rams wanted to upgrade at quarterback, and the Lions had to start a rebuild. And look what the Lions got with those picks. That would be pretty cool to see. But in the meantime, yeah, it's been fun watching Matthew the last 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So Hunter's got a question.
Bill, I know we touched on this a little before the show, and I have my own theories as a pretty big Lions fan myself about why the Stafford and Caldwell era didn't, achieve quite those lengths that we wanted. But I was curious about your take on that. I personally feel as though Matthew in 2016 really took a step up in his play, and those last 2 years, I thought there was a big difference there. But I was curious about your take on that.
Well, I have a pretty strong opinion about it, and I've shared it with Sean on our WJR Gridiron Rap show. Got that in there, Sean. How about that?
Well done. What a pro.
But I believe this. Let's go back to the 2014 season, Jim Caldwell's first year with the Lions. Okay. We have the highest rated defense we've had in decades. Matthew under Jim performs very well. We win 11 regular season games that year, which was the second highest total in franchise history. Okay. We go into that offseason. Let's look at the offseason first. Everybody remembers the Dallas game, right? Well, this is how close I believe we truly were. I am convinced as I'm sitting here that if the right call was made on that pass, we win the game. I just believe that. It was a key point in the game. I believe we beat Dallas. But the pass to Pettigrew, obvious interference, flag's thrown, gets picked up. We lose that game. Okay. Dallas the next week goes to Green Bay, right? Remember that game? Remember what happened? Yeah. It goes to the 1 yard line, catch or no catch, right? It was that close. Dallas in Lambeau coulda, shoulda, woulda beat Green Bay. By today's catch rules, I think it would have been a catch, right? Okay. Now, remember Green Bay the next week? They go to Seattle. Green Bay is beating Seattle in the fourth quarter, I believe, by 16 points. Okay. Seattle scores one touchdown, onside kick, right? It was the tight end for the Packers, right in his hands, hits his chest, bounces out. Seattle recovers. They go down, tie the game, overtime, long pass down the middle, touchdown. Seattle wins the game. And then, oh, by the way, the Super Bowl that year, Marshawn Lynch, goal line. That's how close Seattle was to winning the Super Bowl. The interception on the goal line by Michael Butler, right? I think that was his name, right? Malcolm Butler, I'm sorry, of the Patriots. Great defensive play, but the point I'm making is the Lions coulda, shoulda beat Dallas. Dallas had Green Bay beat. Green Bay had Seattle beat. And Seattle was 1 yard from a Super Bowl championship, with the most questioned play call in Super Bowl history, perhaps. So that's how close we were. Now, what happened after that season was one of the most impactful, in my opinion, mistakes that we made. And it might get a chuckle out of some people because it was not re-signing Ndamukong Suh. There was such a trickle down to that. And despite what people think out there, what's been written, what's been said, I am convinced, and I have reason to be, that he wanted to stay here, that he loved playing for Jim Caldwell. I know that. And he wanted to stay here, but we lose him. It becomes a financial decision. Okay. you contrast that with what the Rams did this year, and they not only are they're spending the money, but draft picks, whatever, because they believed that they could go all in and win, and so far they're doing it. Now, what I think happened when we lost Sue, it was a trickle down effect. The defense, never really recovered. I mean, we led the league in rushing defense that year. We were one of the top defensive units in the entire NFL. And you lose that guy, and it's a domino effect. And it was. We start out, what was it, 1-7?
1-7, yep.
Yeah, and then the team general manager Martin Mayhew gets fired, Tom LeWan gets fired, and the rest is history. But I think not re-signing Sue was the biggest mistake that was made. And I think looking back, I don't know what the difference in money was, but the difference between winning and losing, I don't believe that. I think in hindsight, I think there's a number of people that wish we would have done whatever we had to keep him, and then we would have really. And then one more component to that was getting a running game. I mean, we never were able to get that running game under Jim Caldwell. So, whether we would have or not, who's to say? We tried, but I think the big one was losing Sue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just one man's opinion. I always felt that Joe Lombardi was trying to make Matthew Stafford something that he wasn't. I always felt that way. I think Joe Lombardi said, well, I did this with Drew Brees and I did that with Drew Brees, and we had so much success in New Orleans. Well, here's the issue. Matthew Stafford isn't Drew Brees, and Drew Brees isn't Matthew Stafford. And there are a lot of strengths to Matthew Stafford's game, arm strength, that Drew Brees did not have. And I always wonder, this is, looking back, and I always wonder if there was a different offensive coordinator that year, even Jim Bob Cooter, because, he really had a couple of good years under Jim Bob Cooter. I always wonder if things would have been different in 2014. We'll never know. It's revisionist history, but it's amazing to me because I agree with what you first said, Hunter. All one has to do is forget looking at game film. All one has to do is look at his numbers. They went like that. They did. You can go look right now. His numbers went like that. So just one man's opinion. I always wondered if there was a different offensive coordinator because, as Bill said, boy, that recipe in 2014 was nice. That was a nice. You had that defense. You had some magic and everything, and it reminded an old guy like me, Hunter, no disrespect to you, of that 91 team that Lomas was a part of. There was a little something going on, and unfortunately it didn't come to fruition.
Yeah. My biggest thing about that year was I always wondered why Coach Caldwell didn't take over some of the play calling. I just always wondered why, because that's how, he's a great play caller. That's how he made his name on play calling. I just never understood why he just didn't step in, like Dan Campbell did this year with the Lions offense, and just kind of add his flavor, add his touch to that offense. I just never understood that back in those years when Coach Caldwell was here.
So are the Lions cursed with this? It seems that every time something's going to happen good, we get the process of the catch. We get the record-setting field goal. We get what's going on here?
I'm going to let you handle that, Bill.
That's why I retired.
You just shake your head. There are so many pieces. You've all talked about all those pieces. They never just come together. And when they do, it's like something happens.
Yeah, I believe that all of us, and especially the diehard fans, can look at Cincinnati with hope and realize they were the worst team in the league 3 years ago, record-wise. And now the difference is they drafted a quarterback. And in today's game, I believe a quarterback is more important than ever, because the rules, as Lomas knows, the rules over the years have evolved to favor the offense, to favor the quarterback.
Yep.
That no one's going to deny that, because you can't. So I think, and the type of quarterback today is got to be more athletic. I mean, look at Buffalo. I mean, that kid, his athleticism is off the charts, and he's big. And he's like a faster Roethlisberger. He can stay in the pocket as long as he needs to, and then he can shrug, and then he's got speed. So I think the recipe for a modern day quarterback's a little different. But what the Bengals have done has to give Lion fans some hope, because they were right where the Lions have been, just a few short years ago.
I rebuke with every fiber of my being the term never. I hate never. When somebody says the Lions are never going to win, I rebuke that in every way possible. And here's why. The Golden State Warriors were a woebegone nothing franchise. And you know what happens? You get the right people in place who put the right people in place. There was a hockey team called the Detroit Red Wings that were absolutely atrocious. They were called the Dead Things. They were never going to win anything. They put the right people in place who put the right people in place. Bill, hearkening back to the days of your youth, the Pittsburgh Penguins were a terrible franchise. They drafted some tall, skinny kid from Montreal that barely knew any English named Mario Lemieux, and he created a bunch of Stanley Cups. So to me, it's about putting the right people in place and letting them do their thing. Unfortunately, the Lions have done it a little bit here, a little bit there, but they haven't been able to put it together. But when I hear somebody say, especially like you youngsters like Hunter, oh, the Lions are never going to win, I refuse to believe that. My brain doesn't work that way, because I've watched really struggling franchises do it by that exact recipe, by getting the right people in place. It's easier said than done. You have to find those people, and then they have to find a bunch of people. But I will not ever accept somebody saying the Lions are never going to win. I can't.
No, I agree with you, Sean. The Lions will win. I believe that in my head and in my heart. Probably not soon enough for everyone in our community, but they're going to win. And is there some good fortune involved? Yeah, there usually is. But the NFL, unlike the other professional sports, is set up for success throughout. The draft is structured that way. The salary cap's structured that way. Free agency, what have you. So from a professional league standpoint, the Lions are in the best league for hope. Hope is not a strategy. We all know that. But heck, I go back, Sean, when you were mentioning my youth, I initially thought you were going to talk about the Steelers.
There's another one.
The Steelers, I mean, what sports fan today would know the answer to this question? What professional football franchise from 1933 to 1973 never won a single division?
Wow.
Nothing.
Wow.
The Pittsburgh Steelers.
I'm going to guess the Steelers.
Yeah,
Wow.
right. And what did they do? Like Sean said, they hired the right people. In 1969, they hired Chuck Noll to be the coach. They drafted Joe Green, the greatest player in franchise history.
Mean John Green.
And then the following year, Terry Bradshaw. So you got the foundation and cornerstone for your offense, your defense, and a head coach that would win four Super Bowls. So this now we're talking, how many years ago did that happen in Pittsburgh? But same things were being said back then that are being said today in Detroit. So, yeah, there's no doubt. I agree with you, Sean. The Lions will win someday. It's just when.
I have faith.
Yes, gotta have faith.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, remember a year ago, this past Sunday, ironically, when the Matthew Stafford trade goes down, there were more experts, pundits, commentators, media in our town that said he'll never make it to the Super Bowl. He's not good enough. He's this, he's that. And then despite how so a lot of them said never. And then he wins the first game. Well, that's just one game. He's not gonna beat Tom Brady. He's not gonna end Tom Brady's career, which we can talk about.
Yep.
And then, well, he can't beat the 49ers. They have his number. He'll never beat them. They've beaten him two straight times. Never say never, right? Never say never.
Yep. You're right. You're right about that.
Yeah.
So that, not like you said, Dale, there's so much to cover. I mean, you talk about that, you can transition into Tom Brady's career coming to an end. There's so much out there, especially in the football world right now.
But you know what? Let me go back to one thing, because Lomas was such a part of this. Go back to that 91 team, right? Okay. The most important unit in football is as important as quarterbacks are, and great wide receivers and edge rushers and all that. The offensive line is the unit that can make the difference. When you have a great offensive line, you can win. The Cowboys and the Lions were both on a parallel track, right? In the late 80s, early 90s. We lost 2/5 of our offensive line. And players, I mean, Lomas can speak more than I, but Andolsek was on his way to a Pro Bowl career.
Oh, yeah.
Mike Utley was going to play for 10 years for us.
Yes.
Okay? So when you lose that, Lomas can only block 2 people at one time. It's hard to block 3, which he had to do. Okay?
He's got talent.
Yeah. but you when you lose that, then you got to use draft picks or free agency to replace players that were already there, so you can't help other components and parts of the team. The Cowboys, when their winning times in the 90s were attributed to the triplets, to Aikman and Irvin and Emmett. Yeah, they're great. But that offensive line, Lomas, Larry Allen, Nate Newton, are you kidding me? They dominated. 2-A, Stepnoski, they dominated. And we would have too. I believe that. There's no doubt in my mind we would have. We would have too. So
I agree, Bill. You just think about all the adversity that we had to go through. Like you say, losing Mike, losing Eric. It was just a lot. It's a lot for an organization and a team to go through.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of things that we had to go through back in the 90s. It really was. And it's emotional. That's the thing that people don't realize. You're human beings. It's emotional when you lose a guy that you played next to. Or, you get one paralyzed and you lose one to death. I mean, it's hard for teams. It's hard for individuals to overcome that. And that was a lot that we went through. So I just think because we were such a family back in the 90s, that's why we were able to overcome some of the things that happened to us, because we were such a tight family. But, man, I'm telling you, man, that can break most teams, and a lot of teams it would.
Yeah, no doubt. And we were a good team, and we were competitive throughout the 90s, but we didn't get over the hump like we wanted to.
Yeah.
We didn't get over, and then we made some decisions that, to me were inexplicable, not keeping Lomas, not keeping Kevin Glover, Benny Blades. I mean, that's where I think we shot ourselves in the foot. And it wasn't just bad luck. It was poor decisions from a football standpoint.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about some good decisions. Tom Brady. Tom Brady finally announces his retirement. Of course, it was leaked, I guess. He wanted to wait a little longer, but he announces his retirement. Greatest of all time. Is it time? And, Bill, you were talking about how important a quarterback is and this new type of quarterback. We got a 44-year-old guy who almost made it to the Super Bowl again for the 8th time? Does he have 7 Super Bowl rings? How many times has he been there?
Been there 10 times, 7 rings.
10 times. Yeah. He had the best year statistically of his career.
Most passing
yards. We'll never see this I don't think.
No.
Never say never. Here we're saying never. I'm saying never.
Right,
But
right.
Sean and I, we were talking about that 2 weeks ago when Matthew and the Rams played the Bucks. And if you guys remember, I'm sure you do, the day before there was some chatter. Somebody leaked something. Something got out that Tom's considering retiring. This may be it. And Sean and I talked on the show that, you know, Tom, for his whole career, and he learned it in perhaps the best place with New England, nothing got out unless you wanted it to get out. They had such a tight ship on everything. You didn't hear anything from the Patriots, and you never heard anything from Tom Brady unless he wanted you to. And it almost always came from him. So Sean and I talked about there's something going on here that doesn't quite make sense, because for this to get out, in my opinion about it was, you know, Tom will handle it however he chooses to, but you have all the other teammates, all the other Buccaneers who are, I mean, and Lomas, you know this, players today, nothing slips by them. They hear everything, they see everything, they're on social media. So every one of his teammates going into that game against the Rams heard this, okay? And they're wondering, like, what's going on? So to me, it was a distraction, however minor. They're human. Their leader, there's talk out there about this invincible man. This may be it, okay? And then the game starts the way it did, and the Rams are pounding them. And we talked about it after the game, and here's my thought on it, for what it's worth. And I told Sean this on our show that night. With the backdrop of the comments about Brady, and even the announcers brought it up during the game, acknowledging that there's been some chatter about, you know, could this be it for Tom? This game, if he loses this year, blah, blah, blah. So the way that game, you know, started out was terrible for the Bucs. And as I'm watching it and thinking about, you know, what we were just talking about the potential for it being it for him, I'm thinking he's not going to walk out, you know, with this type of performance. He doesn't want this to be his final game. But then what happened in the second half? Tom Brady does Tom Brady. Brings them all the way back. And what were we all thinking? We were thinking the Super Bowl, right? 28-3, Atlanta's up. Well, in this game, it was 27-3, right? And we're thinking he's done it before, he can do it again. And he did. He brought them all the way back. Tom Brady did everything he could do in that game. So it changed the narrative, flipped it 180. Tom Brady was Tom Brady. Okay. If he retires after this game, no one's gonna blink an eye, because he did what he has done his whole career. Now the other part of the end of that game that really hit me, okay, what was the first, you know, whatever you want to call it, the first highlight of Tom's career that we can remember going way back? What I'm asking, what was it? What do we remember him doing early in his career?
Winning the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
His second year.
Yeah. So that was like the first chapter of the Tom Brady book. That Super Bowl, but the final minute of that game, right? Remember, they get the ball. The Rams just tied the game up, okay? They get the ball. John Madden, God bless him, is on the air saying they'll just take a knee here. I wouldn't risk, you know, trying to score here. John repeated it a couple times, but Tom Brady wasn't listening. Bill Belichick wasn't listening. They marched down the field, get in position for the winning field goal. What did Matthew do at the end of that game? The exact same thing. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it almost, to me, and you know, we romanticize about sports, okay? We all do. But it came full circle. Tom, you know, and this could be in the movie or the book maybe, but he was watching himself. He was watching a replay of that Super Bowl where the game gets tied in the last minute. Most people think there's going to be overtime, but no, that quarterback on the field, he has other ideas. His coach has other ideas, just like I did in 2002 in January of 2002 when I marched my team down to set up the winning field goal. And that's what Matthew did. And whether that has anything to do with what's transpired since then, who knows? But to me, it was pretty poetic in a way that the game ended like it did. And you have Tom sitting over there, watching like a snapshot of one of the most memorable games in his career in a very similar way.
Yeah. What you think, Sean?
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
I think Bill's right about one thing. We all are hopeless romantics, right? And so many of us are convinced that the guy that I watched growing up is the best ever, okay? And I dropped that once and for all when he came back and beat the Falcons in Super Bowl 51. To me, at that point in time, I don't know how any human could sit back and say that there was a better quarterback than Tom Brady. I was a Joe Montana guy. I mean, that was my, my dad used to tell me all the time, yeah, you never saw this Otto Graham. He was the best and all that. We all do that in our generation, right? I don't know how a living, breathing organism could watch the game of football, observe Tom Brady's career, and not call him the best for a myriad of reasons. Forget the Super Bowls. For him to play at the level that he did until the age of 44, he really was a freak of nature. Total tip of the cap, whether you liked him, whether you liked the Patriots, the Buccaneers, or the Michigan Wolverines, it's all inconsequential. He's the best I ever saw.
Yeah.
I
know for me. Go ahead, Hunter. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say Brady's greatest accomplishment to me is saying, I'll quit when I suck, and he didn't even do that.
Yeah.
He didn't even do that. It's ridiculous.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
You're right, Hunter. And the thing for me is I played till I was 39. And it's just so amazing to me that guy was out there at 44 playing at the level that he was playing at. That was the most amazing part to me because your skills start deteriorating. Your body's beat up, and for him to play at a higher level than he played at in his younger years, it was unbelievable, man. Unbelievable career, unbelievable player that we got a chance to watch for 22 years.
Yeah. Well, I think you had another 5 years in you. I think you had another 5.
Yeah.
Could have gone. But no, Brady is, he's phenomenal. And it was so interesting that he wasn't drafted high. What is it, 6th round? But we've also got to touch on Harbaugh. Like we said at the beginning, there's so much going on. So what's going on with Jim?
Well, there are reports. I think Chris Ballas of the Wolverine.com was the first one to report it, that it's a mere formality now that this interview in Minnesota is happening tomorrow, that according to numerous sources, Jim Harbaugh is going to become the Minnesota Vikings' next head coach. I know in the report they allege that he didn't address the team per se, but he did allegedly say some goodbyes and thank yous on Monday, and that this is a mere formality. And I can't help but to go back to the first topic that we were talking about, in regards to Brian Flores, that was this decision made 2 days ago, and they're just having this interview, for whatever reason, but they know that they're going to be together. And a lot of times things like that happen. Sometimes they don't, but that's the circumstance as we know it right now. Still nothing official, but I think Chris from the Wolverine.com wouldn't say something like that. And quite frankly, a lot of other people have picked up on that report. The interview is tomorrow. Nothing official yet, but boy, to all of you, it's certainly looking that way that Jim Harbaugh is going to matriculate, to quote the great Hank Stram, Bill Keenis, matriculate his way back to the National Football League.
Yeah. He's done this once before.
Yes.
Very successfully, too. He had great success. I mean, what, three championship games, I think, a Super Bowl. You can't deny that. You can't deny that he knows what the NFL game is. A player, assistant coach for a short period, and a head coach. So he definitely knows the game.
Okay, so off the wall question: is he a better collegiate coach or a better NFL coach?
My personal opinion, I think a better NFL coach.
I agree, Sean.
I do. I think a better NFL coach. It's hard not to look at his resume in San Francisco. 44, 19-1, and he got that team going. It's amazing because if this had happened a year ago, what would we all be saying about Jim Harbaugh? Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Well, a whole lot of nothing. But he put it together. To his credit, he put it together this year. He knocked off Ohio State. He won the Big Ten championship. Finally got that hardware that really was missing from his resume at Michigan. I do need to throw in he did not beat Michigan State this year. So
thank you.
I thought he was happy with that. I wanted to point that out. But no, all jokes aside, it's amazing what can happen. Certainly the resume, certainly the tenure there, everything looked better based on what happened in 2021. It was a fantastic season. He did a fantastic job with this team. But long-winded answer to your question, Deb. Bill, I don't know about you. I thought he was a tremendous coach in the National Football League.
Right. Well, I've gone back and forth on this. Initially, I thought that he was better suited for college. And I'll tell you why. Because I think his longest, stint at the college jobs was 4 or 5 years. And then he leaves Stanford after about 4 or 5 years and then goes to the NFL and then leaves the 49ers. And at the end there, it wasn't the, kumbaya place that it might have been prior to that. And I thought maybe his approach, his hard charging approach, had a shelf life. Maybe he was wearing some people out. Quite frankly, you heard stories about him and Trent Baalke, the GM, that it was not a good relationship at the end. So I'm thinking in college, he can go to college, and there's such turnover. I mean, every 4 or 5 years, you got a whole new crop of recruits. Every year, you got a whole new crop of recruits. Players are only staying there for 3, 4, 5 years. So I'm thinking maybe this will play better in a college game because he won't have a chance to burn himself out, burn people out, if you will. But what I said earlier, and I believe that, I think he realizes the disparity in the college game. There is a disparity, and this name, image, likeness, who knows where that's going to go. And for him to have the year he did this year, for them to dominate Ohio State like they did, and then go to the playoff and just get pounded by Georgia, it was like, wow. Maybe something hit him like, you know what? This is about as good as it may get for me. And maybe there's fear on his part of restrictions of what he can and can't do with respect to the name, image, likeness at Michigan. That other schools, Georgia, Alabama, the SEC, Texas A&M, publicly announcing over $100 million a year allocated to that. I mean, how can you compete with that? I mean, you can't. So, and he has a relationship with the new GM at the Vikings. That's nothing but a positive. And he also has unfinished business at the NFL level. I think he finished. Realistically, he finished his business at Michigan. Some would say won a Big Ten, beat Ohio State, made it to the playoffs. Some could say that's a pretty good resume to have as a collegiate coach at your alma mater, nonetheless. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, name, image, likeness. That's a whole other show. As we've that changes really everything. We got to get back together and do that. But we're running out of time. So I got 2 questions. Number one, why are postseason games so good? They are so good. Yeah. You just can't turn off the TV. And number 2, who's going to win the Super Bowl?
Wow.
Okay. Who
Bill,
wants to
you
go first?
Bill, you go first.
Well, I think unlike the other sports, and Sean and I have talked about this too, you rarely, if ever, have a team that a 500 team or a below 500 team, making it 2 or 3 games into the playoffs in the NFL. It's usually the better teams. Have there been some wild cards that have made it? Yeah, but they're playing awful good at the end of the year. This year was Valhalla. I mean,
Oh my God.
What?
So good.
5 of the last 6 games go to the last play of the game. That's remarkable. And then the 6th game, the Rams game, goes to the last minute because the 49ers still had a chance. So it's the ultimate theater. We've all said that sports is the one true, nonfiction show that it exists out there. There's no reality show like sports.
Best reality show there is.
There's nothing like it. And we could have written scripts and no one would have accepted them at the beginning of this year. Certainly, I don't think anybody who's going to accept the Matthew Stafford script, which I believe in my head and my heart, is going to end in a Super Bowl victory. I just think, and it has to do with Matthew, but the defense is playing well. They're running. They may get a couple more running backs back, Sean. Hunter, I don't know if you saw that, but they're getting players that have been on IR and on the bench with injuries. They may be getting some of them back, and I think as important as Matthew's been to them, Odell Beckham has been phenomenal. What a pickup that was, and any team in the league could have had access to him. But the Rams got it done. They got it done. So kudos to them. Von Miller's been a great pickup. Sean Robinson, remember him? He had a good game Sunday. Former Lion. So I think the Bengals' future is incredible. I'd buy stock in them no matter what the cost right now. I love Joe Burrow. And I think the beauty of the Bengals, and Sean and I have talked about this on the show, a comment Joe Burrow made a few weeks ago. We don't know what we're not supposed to know. We don't know what we don't know. We're just having fun. We're in our backyard playing football. And there's a beauty to that innocence. And there's a reality that can serve you well in the playoffs and now potentially in the Super Bowl.
I like the Bengals. And I don't want to play the role of villain here. Bill can attest to this. We've been talking up the Bengals for a few months. We really have. There's something about a team that consistently faces the adversity that they face, and it doesn't faze them. I mean, they just aren't fazed by it. And I think a lot of people thought that the Chiefs were going to run away and hide last week, and the Bengals just said, second half will be here. And I mean, they flipped that switch, and there's something going on with that team right now. And I like what you said there, Bill. Buy stock, buy now. I buy in this team. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they got a little more magic left for this week. I really, truly do. This is a 50-50 proposition for me. I mean that. I'm not trying to cop out, but I'm going to pick the Bengals.
Yeah.
Okay. And Lomas, what do you think?
Oh, man, I'm sorry. First of all, I'm sorry about my bad connection at Somerset Mall. So I'm sorry I'm not able to see you.
Shout out to Somerset. Everybody should go shopping.
Yeah. I'm going to have a talk with Somerset about their internet connection. But for me, I'm going with the experienced team. And I just think the Rams. I think the Rams have been there. Sean McVay's been to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. They got a couple of players that are still left off that Super Bowl team from a couple of years ago. I just think they're poised. I think they're the better team. They got the better talent on their team. And we know talent doesn't always win out, but I just think with buy-in that the LA Rams put in this year, we're getting Stafford. with bringing in all the other players that they brought in. You know, they were ready for this. This is what they were ready for. And I just think they're going to get it. I really think that they're going to win this game. And yeah, so I'm going with the Rams all the way.
And let me interject, Deb, for Lomas. Lomas, how much you said something I think was profound. Go into your second Super Bowl, you know what to expect. Not as far as the game goes, but everything that goes around the Super Bowl experience. And the Rams were there just a few years ago. So the Bengals, this is their first shot. So
right.
I mean, Bill,
great point, Bill. That's a great point, because you're right. I know how I felt with my first Super Bowl, and I know how I felt when I played in my second Super Bowl. And it was, like you said, it's no comparison. You know what to expect. You know the long halftime. You know all the stars that are going to be there. You know it's going to be a week of distraction for you. You know the media you're going to have to deal with, tickets, family. Yeah. It's just so much that go into it, like Bill is saying, that these guys don't know, where a few of the Rams player and the coach, most of that coaching staff, they know, because they were just there a few years ago. So I do think the element of being there is going to help the Rams out a great deal over the Bengals.
We also have a little bit of a home field advantage there too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yeah. Deb, who do you have winning?
Oh, I'm Rams all the way. First of all, I go with the experience, like Lomas was saying. And ultimately it comes down to, I just love that Cinderella story with Stafford. You know, I think that's just with the year he's having, he deserves it. And after everything he's been through, he deserves it. So I'm going to go with that. And I agree. Bengals will get there, but next year, let's do it next year. Next year we'll do the Lions.
There you go. The Lions.
Hunter, what do you think? Yeah.
I think it's going to be the Bengals. I think the main thing in this game, or I think it's going to be, I don't know. I think the Bengals can do it. It's going to be difficult for them to block Donald and Miller. I think, especially if they're going to have to double team Donald all game and they don't have their tackles healthy, with Riley Reif being down for a little bit, another former Lion. But I don't know. I think the Bengals, I think it goes a little bit like what Sean said. They don't know what not to expect. They don't know like the scars that they're missing. I think that they're going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And there's Ray with Matthew.
Look at that. Look at that. Oh,
okay.
I guess that's who Ray's picking, obviously.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll see. We'll see, guys. But we've been on for almost an hour now. So thank you so much. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Hunter. Lomas, through all the adversity you just went through tonight.
Anytime. It was my pleasure to be sure.
Absolutely. We love having you. We got to get back on Name, Image, Likeness or something else. There's so much going on. But check us out on YouTube, on Spotify, on sportslaw.com, and thank everybody, all of our listeners.
Thanks, Deb.